Now let's take a look at, well, how to take a look at the picture that you've just taken. You push the shutter release. Now you want to check and make sure that it's stuck to the file, that everything looks good. And it all starts with this button in the bottom right-hand corner on the back, the playback button, right? So I'm going to push that, and the camera's going to go into playback mode. And we're going to see displayed either the last image that we took, or if we were in playback mode earlier today, the last image that we were looking at. So you might remember this picture from the last video. As I was moving around with my histogram trying to get the exposure, I went ahead and snapped a picture. And that's the one that we snapped. Now, there are a few things that we can do here, and I want to step through these more than once, actually. But let's start with just a quick overview. Right now, I'm looking at just a blank picture, and that may or may not be your experience as you push the playback button. But just like with the other view screen, there are multiple different ways we can look at this, and we step through those by pressing the info button on the back of the camera. And you'll see that I go from having just an unobstructed photograph. So if I push the button once, I now have the photograph with some information superimposed at the bottom. If I push the button again, I now have a lot of information on the screen and a thumbnail of the photograph. And this is kind of neat in that I have 4 histograms at the bottom of that screen. One is an overall brightness shown in white, and then there's a red, a green, and a blue. Those are all broken out by color. So I can actually look at the relative brightness of each of the color channels there. Also, I can see the information about how I shot this. I was on manual focus, f7.1 at a 30th of a second. My focal length was 28 millimeters. My ISO was 3200. There's an assortment of other things on there that I can tell by looking at it. I'm going to push the info button again. Now I get this whopping big histogram superimposed over the thing. This is, nice for evaluating how on spot my exposure is. That looks pretty decent. And if I push the button again, so it says shadow and highlights at the bottom. And if anything were terribly overexposed or terribly underexposed, it would be flashing at me. Right now, I'm not seeing that, but don't worry, we'll come back to it. And I want to push that button one more time, and it takes me to my clear image. And I can cycle through those just by pressing the info button. The other thing that I want to look at is if I turn this dial, and this is the same one that I showed you earlier when I was zooming in to check my focus while I was shooting. This dial zooms in and out while I'm in playback mode and is very critical to checking certain things. Again, it's the same dial that sets your shutter speed while you're shooting. If I turn it clockwise, it begins to zoom in. So I can zoom in on this picture if I want to check the focus. And as I zoom in, I can also navigate. I can use the up, down, left, and right buttons on my touchpad, or I can use the touch screen on the back of the camera to evaluate whether or not I'm in focus. So by scrolling around, I can see the Space Ranger patch there. I can even zoom in a little bit farther, I think. Yeah, there's not much doubt in my mind that that picture's in focus. I can clearly read that even when I'm maximum zoom. All right, so I can zoom back out here. And maybe I want to spot check, make sure that Venom's in focus too. So I'll zoom in a little bit. Scroll to the left. Oh, you get the idea. Yep, Venom looks pretty good too. All right, so I'm just going to go back the other direction now. And notice that as I keep going, something changes, right? I get to my full screen view there, and then I'm going to zoom out one more click, and I start getting thumbnails of the pictures that I shot earlier today, and I can navigate to those if I want to. If I zoom out even farther, I get smaller thumbnails and more of them. And if I zoom out even farther, I get a calendar, so I can step around and look at stuff that I shot day by day. What did I shoot on the 17th of July? If I just click the OK button, it's going to put that image up full screen. But let me go back to my, other direction, zooming out here. I can also go to a day and start to zoom in, and I'll start to get those assorted thumbnails. I was playing around with exposure of a toy in my house that was backlit by the sun. Right. Now, this is kind of weird to me. If I click on an image when I'm partially zoomed in, like if I click on a thumbnail, it takes me into this editing menu, which I'm not interested in. So if I just want to look at that picture, all I have to do is zoom in until it's full screen. If I'm full screen and I do the left, right, up, down, it steps through the pictures as I took them. All right, so let's go back out. And this is what I'm interested in. So I shot a series of my friends here in front of my blue background. And this first one is properly exposed. And then I went through and I did a series where I started out with it 3 stops overexposed, and then 2 stops overexposed, and only 1 stop overexposed, properly exposed, and then under by 1, under by 2, under by 3, under by 4, under by 5, and then that's not them anymore. So let's go through these, but we'll do it using some of these other views. All right, so I'm going to push the info button once, twice. Okay, now this shows me my 4 histograms in addition to other information about the exposure. So this was properly exposed, f5.6 at a 30th of a second. So if I step to the right one, okay, you can see this was at f4. I'm sorry, this is f5.6 still. I didn't touch the iris. This is down to a 1/4 of a second. So this is 3 stops overexposed. And you can see by looking at the histograms how far those histograms are pushed to the right. And you can also see the flashing telling me that, hey, these parts of your picture are completely overexposed. So Buzz Lightyear is pretty much ruined. Parts of Spider-Man are pretty much ruined. This is not as overexposed, right? This is an 1/8 of a second. And you can see the histograms are migrating towards the center and less of my picture is flashing. All right, this is only slightly overexposed at a 15th of a second. You can see the flashing parts are on Buzz Lightyear around his collar there. There's some reflections that are flashing. Histograms are getting nice and centered. And here we go. This is the one that I believe is best exposed, a 30th of a second at f5.6. And the histograms might be a little left justified, except for the blue one. But again, there's a lot of blue in that picture, so that's not surprising. But we'll keep going and get darker. This is 1 stop under. 2 stops under. Look at how the histograms are heading to the left. 3 stops under. 4 stops under. 5 stops under. And if you look closely, you can see there's some flashing blue in the screen now. It's telling me these are unrecoverable blacks. It doesn't matter what I do to them in Photoshop after this, they're always going to be black. Yeah, that was our last one. All right, I'm going to press the info to move to the next screen. All right, this just shows the big histogram, so I'm just going to step backwards through it. This should be fun. So we're at 5 under, 4 under, 3 under, 2 under, 1 under, properly exposed. And notice that it's not touching the left or the right. Everything fits nicely in the middle of the histogram. 1 over, 2 over, 3 over. And then we're back to a properly exposed image. All right, I'm going to press the info button to cycle again. Now this is just shadow and highlights. So as I step through, it's going to give me those flashies to say, hey, this is so overexposed. All right, and there really shouldn't be any here in these middle ones until we start getting nice and dark. And here you can better see that flashing in Buzz Lightyear's belt and on parts of Venom. That is so underexposed that it's just pure black, and nothing I can ever do will change it will stop it from being pure black. All right. And I'm going to press info one more time, and it takes me back around to my basic clear image. So again, I can zoom in to check my focus, and I can use the info button to step through various exposure evaluations. So this is incredibly useful. Again, if I snap a picture, I can pop it up in Playback and look at those histograms and see if I got it right or not. I probably should have checked it before I took the picture, but I can always check it immediately afterwards as well. Check and make sure my focus is sharp before I turn the model loose, before I turn my back and move to a different location. I will do a lot of this when I'm playing around. So these are some shots that I took outside just a few days ago. Let me zoom back. Oops, let me zoom in on these. And you might see these photos show up in other places. All right, so this is a photograph of the statue of Jesus outside of the brothers' residence. And I took 3 of these at slightly different exposures because I knew when I was playing with it in post, it might make a difference. Let me step through my info. So you can see that in this first one, it's pretty much centered. The second one, I darkened it a little bit, but everything is still between the edges of the histogram. I could certainly recover that in Photoshop. This one's a little bit brighter. And then the question was, as I was playing with this in Photoshop, which one is going to make the best result? And there's... All right, so this was a fun little series. And again, I'll just step through these. I took, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those pictures. This is just a group of hanging flowers there. And let's get to this display. This is probably the useful one. So you can see that in this first one, the background is very much overexposed. All those clouds are flashing and there's no detail left in them. Let me step up a little bit. But what I was wanting for this particular frame was to have the flowers well exposed. And then my thinking was that I could go into Photoshop and actually composite 2 different photographs, one of the flowers, and put them over a different background. So that was what I had in mind when I shot this one. So you can see that the next one I shot was considerably darker, and the clouds are becoming more normal. And the one after that is darker still. So this one, the clouds are properly exposed. So let me get my full screen. You can see this all fits nicely in the histogram. So that doesn't look too bad overall, but there's not much detail in the flowers. The flowers are really shadows. So this is why I was thinking I might have one exposure that was good sky and one exposure that was good flowers. And there's a couple more attempts here. Now, as it turns out, I was able to take one of these that's more or less middle of the road exposure and do what I wanted to with it. I'd never had to composite the 2 images. So your takeaways from this are that you can use the playback system to evaluate your photographs, and you can do this more or less on the spot, right? You finish taking the set of photographs you wanted to take a moment and look at them critically. Check your focus, check your exposure, make sure that you're going to be happy with them before you turn your model loose or before you drive away to a new location. Make sure that you look at those. Just take a few seconds. It doesn't take long to make sure that you didn't make some sort of terrible oversight. It sucks to realize after the fact that you made a terrible oversight. It's a lesson that's hard to forget, though. So, it's all about the learning, right? Okay, moving on, we're going to start talking about some aesthetic stuff. Our next video, we're going to talk about using shutter speed in a creative fashion to generate motion blur.